Welcome to the Miracle You, guiding you on the journey towards finding passion and purpose, and how to discover, create, and live a life by your design. Whether your success has been plentiful or your missed opportunities have been overwhelming, we can help you become a more empowered, masterful person and show you how to share your gift with the world. It's time to inspire change from within with the host of the Miracle You, Vince Kramer.
Hello, imagination. I'm Vince Kramer, your host, and welcome to the Miracle You, where you learn about the magic of living your life by finding the example in real life.
To have a happy, fulfilled life, it's so important for you to be authentic to yourself. And to do that, you have to understand who you truly are. And there's many ways for us to figure out who we are. But one of the most effective ones is to notice the people in our lives that we are attracting. Each and every person is a mirror. And when we look at the people that come into our lives, that are attracted into our lives because of the energy that we put out, it's easy for us to understand that we are attracting like energy. So those people that are coming into our lives that are showing us just how amazing they are, what their capabilities are, how they best show up in the world, they're really showing you. And those things that you see in others that you admire, the things that you are so impressed with when others show up in the world, are actually things that you are. And when you have an opportunity to see these things in others and then realize that they're just showing you, you can take those things that you admire so much and bring them into your day-to-day life, into your daily routines, into the way you show up at work, the way you show up in your relationships, and the way that you show up in life. It is so important to be authentic, because if you're not authentic, you're spending an awful lot of your time trying to hide what you think others might see in you, or you're spending an awful lot of time being what you think others expect you to be. And when you fully step into your authenticity, you are living a very courageous and an emotionally intelligent life. That's what you're here to do. And that's what we hope through our podcast and through our work, we can help you do. I'm with Eric Winters today. Eric is a self-leadership coach, black belt hand washer, and author with deep knowledge in the science of building courageous and emotionally intelligent mindsets. His know-how is a result of over 20 years of international corporate life, 2 master's degree in human behavior change, and over 12 years helping leaders and their teams become their best selves to meet workplace challenges effectively. He spends much of his time developing authentically courageous leadership through keynotes, workshops, and individual coaching. Eric is the author of Swipe Right on Your Best Self, Simple Steps to a Bolder Life with Fewer Regrets. Eric Winters, are you ready to share the magic of you with the imagination?
I certainly am, Vince. Let's do it.
All right. I'm so excited to have you. We're almost a half a world away. And really, I want you to share with the imagination about you, where you're at, and a little bit more about what you're doing, because, I gave you the intro, but there's not a whole lot there about you. And I'm sure there's so much more you'd like to share. So could you share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, today I am a leadership coach. So I go into organizations and I help people identify what kind of leaders, what kind of professionals do they want to be, if they were to have the careers that they really aspire to, the relationships at work that they really want, and the relationships outside of work. So I help people to craft their own unique personal leadership identity. But it's one thing to know your identity and that you'd like to aspire to, and it's another thing entirely to develop the skills to live it, to show up increasingly as that kind of person each day. And that's what I teach them too. So I provide people skills, and it's a combination of skills to help people to live a life that's true to themselves. That's what I'm doing today. I haven't always done this. I started my life working with IBM, and I worked as an IT professional, and I spent years working in Scotland. I lived there for 8 years. I worked in the Middle East, in Abu Dhabi for 2 years, 3 years in Munich. Fabulous. If all of your listeners really need to check out Munich, it's a wonderful, wonderful city. And I've worked and lived in Australia here. And what I noticed, Vince, was it didn't matter where I was in the world, what the culture was. There were leaders. When the pressure was on, when the challenges were facing them, things were really tough, there were some leaders who could step up to the mark. They could manage themselves, get the best out of themselves, and get the best out of others. And it was a marvel to watch. And then there were leaders throughout all of those cultures who are just as skilled, just as knowledgeable, just as experienced, and yet to some degree they'd lose it. They'd become stressed, they'd get worried, and they would infect their teams with their anxiety and their worry. It would kind of ripple out. And I wanted to know what made the difference. I was just so curious. Hang on, these guys, they're all equally smart. It wasn't about their IQ. They had something else. So I had the wonderful pleasure of immersing myself in the science of human behavior. What are the conditions under which all of us can get better and do our best work, become more resilient, and do work that is more courageous? And that's to say, personally important, but challenging. How can we get better at asking for what we want at work? How can we get better at asking for what we want in relationships? Saying yes to challenging projects, saying no to inappropriate incursions in our personal space. I believe that courage makes all the difference to a life that's either going to be really well lived, really satisfying, or a life that we're going to get to the end to and wish, what if only, so we all want to, if we can, learn the skills to avoid a life of disappointment. If I may, there's a palliative care nurse, Vince, called Bronnie Ware, and she wrote a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. So she was taking care of people in the last few days and weeks, hundreds of people, and she heard the same regret again and again. And the number one regret of the people of the dying, and this is a gift from the dying to the living, and it's this: I wish I had the courage to live a life that's true to myself and not the life that others expected of me. We are all at risk of sharing that regret of not having lived lives true to ourselves and not having developed the courage to do so. So that's what I invest myself in now, is helping others to do just that, to develop courage and to craft and to author lives which will be personally meaningful, and then learn how to live them more and more each day.
I've personally been involved in those regrets. Both my brother, who died at 52 years old, and my father, who died just a couple years ago. In my conversations with them, not in those exact words, but truly described that they wish they would have lived that life, the life that we call meant to live. And they were truly wake-up calls for me, Eric, to really get our work out into the world a lot stronger than we had at the moment, because it was so painful to listen to someone knowing on their deathbed that they wish they could have lived life another way. Were there any wake-up calls in your life that kind of moved you from that corporate world into your leadership coach work?
Well, I had thought I was going to spend my entire life working in the IT corporate world as an IT consultant. That I thought that was my path. And then I was made redundant about 23 years ago. I'd not seen it coming. I did not want it. It happened. And at the time, I had imagined that it was going to be pretty catastrophic. You know, everything I'd hoped for as an IT consultant in Edinburgh, that's where I was, with that particular organization, it all vanished. And then I discovered pretty quickly that there was a world of rich learning that opened up because I was made redundant. And it turns out, in hindsight, to have been the best thing that ever happened. I left the environment that I've been working in, surrounded by the same people, seeing the same things each day. I left the UK and I stepped out started working in Abu Dhabi. And it was so healthy to be exposed to other cultures, different ways of looking at things, different ways of relating to one another. So it was a slap in the face, and a good one. So it really woke me up. And it was being in a different environment that opened my eyes also to seeing how different people worked and realizing, now, hang on, there's something to this. There's something these people are doing that makes a difference. I want to know what it is. So that disruption I had that I did not ask for, thank you, did not want to leave the comfort and the certainty and the predictability of my original role. It was being booted out of that, actually, that opened up a new world. And yeah, I've not looked back.
As I was sharing your introduction, there's a couple phrases in there that really got my attention. And what we found through Imagine Miracles is that just about everything in our life's an inside job. Once we get the inside where we want it to be, where it's supposed to be, then the outside kind of follows suit. You did a good job in what you shared earlier, but I wonder if you could go a little bit deeper in what self-leadership means and what self-leadership looks like.
So yeah, people talk about leadership a lot, and they focus on influencing other people positively. And that's where the mind goes. But before we can do that effectively, we really need to influence ourselves positively. And as you say, it's an inside job. No one else can do this for us. If you're a human being with a pulse, then you've been born into a world in which you inherit 3 human predicaments. Didn't ask for them, but this is what you get if you're alive. You've got a mind that, you live in 2 worlds at the same time. There's the real physical world all around us that we can see and touch and hear and taste, but you also live in your mind. We spend half of our lives imagining futures, remembering the past, and skillful leaders are very good at noticing where their attention is and noticing if they are engaging in thoughts and predictions which are helpful and take them in useful directions, or if they need to shift their attention out of an unhelpful fantasy world into the present. So the first skill that people need to build is, if you're in self-leadership, is knowing where your attention is and getting better at choosing where to place it. And these are skills. Choosing where to place your attention is a skill. So I don't want anyone to think I'm saying it's a bad thing to be in your head. It's not. It's a great thing. It's where all the planning takes place. Fabulous. But when we're in our minds, we're all vulnerable to being swept away by all sorts of thoughts and feelings. And the mind does have a negativity bias. If left to itself, it will take you in a strong current towards how things might go wrong. And it will take you back to mistakes you've made in the past and things you shouldn't have done. And you can get caught in a kind of a whirlpool of increasing despair and negativity. So we need to be able to choose where our attention is and to disengage from unhelpful thoughts and reorient to the real world. That's the first skill of self-leadership, where you place your attention. The second skill of self-leadership is being able to develop a realistic positivity. We all live in a world in which we're drip-fed unhelpful values, toxic values, really, about what it means, how to have a healthy, happy life. So what the media will tell you is, if you want to be happy, well, you need to buy all this stuff. You need all this external stuff, external validation. You need lots of objects. You need praise. You need power. They're suggesting it's the outside job, Vince. And of course, it's not. But we're exposed to this so often that it does deplete us. No wonder people feel depressed and anxious. We're constantly bombarded with messages about how we ought to be, and the gap between the life you're currently living and the life that we're showing you on this poster. All these attractive, happy, popular, successful people that have got the right fragrance. You see, if only you smelt right, Vince, you too could have a successful life like this. Now, it's all nonsense, of course, but a part of us is watching. It watches whether our attention is on TV, advertising, billboards, social media. We're constantly being taught to experience lack. So our attention goes to what's missing, and that's disabling. It's disempowering. So a mindset that we all need to develop is the ability to shift our attention. There's that attention again, but to shift it to what we do have. And I call this developing a mindset of defiant gratitude. The world says you do not have enough, and you're not attractive enough or wealthy enough. You're just not enough. And instead, we can choose to shift our minds to what does exist. And we live in an age of miracles to savor. I'm talking to you, you're around the planet, we're talking in real time. We didn't have to fork out large amounts of money to book a slot to do this. It's amazing. Hot and cold running water at will. Emperors did not have that until recently. Okay, we live more opulent lives than emperors in most of human history. Libraries. There's strawberries are available all year round. And we take these things for granted. So if we are going to live a courageous life of self-leadership, we need to empower ourselves. And one of the things we need to do is to shift our attention away from what the media says you do not have, and to shift it towards what you do have. Not all day, but just now and again, just occasionally. And that will boost your sense of well-being, and it actually boosts your courage. It boosts your courage.
Also helps us with our vibration as we step into that appreciation and gratitude. It helps us raise our vibration through that process. Let me ask you this, Eric. Where we place our attention, that's where the energy flows. Placing our attention on that life that's true to ourselves, is that help us? First of all, what is the life in your definition that is true to ourselves? And then how does putting our attention there help us on that process of obtaining it?
So I would say that a life that's true to yourself is one that you personally can be proud of. So if you were to look back at the end of today, Vince, if you were to get to the end of today, and I know where you are, it's a little bit later in the day, but if you were to look to the end of the day, if you were to have shown up in a way that you could look back and say, you know what, I'm really glad about how today went, about how I participated with today. We're not talking about what other people did, if they said yes, if they agreed to what you suggested, but for you to look back on today and think, yeah, that was a day well spent. How would you have shown up? What kind of things would you have done? But more importantly, how would you have done them? What would you have prioritized? What ways of being? what matters to you. Now, this is different for everyone. For some people, it's a day of creativity. At their core, when they're at their best, they are creative. They're putting different ideas together. For others, it may be compassion. It could be compassion. For others, it's learning. For others, it's taking care of others, really investing. So for some, it's taking care of a garden. It's bringing life out of the soil. There are so many different ways of engaging with life, but the way that's right for you, Vince, will not be the way that's right for me. And society has a lot of ideas about how a man of a certain age ought to be behaving. Not just men, women. Society will applaud women behaving in a certain way, taking certain jobs. And we run the risk of getting to the end of our lives with deep regret if we are too obedient to the expectations of others. And instead, we have a responsibility to really think, okay, yeah, how do I choose to show up? What do I believe would be really worthwhile? Not just for today. That's one of the exercises in my book, to think about a single day. Just break it down. What would be a day that I could be proud of, really proud of? But to extend that out, what if I had a great year, an awesome year, one that I could be proud of? What if I had a phenomenal life? I'm looking back from the future and I could say, yeah, sure, I didn't get my way a lot of the time, but I went for it. I went for it. Not all the time. No one can show up as their best selves 100% of the time, but we can all get better at doing it with grace and courtesy more effectively for more of the time.
Eric, how do people really step into understanding what they really want, or what's really important to them? Because as you shared, society is telling us all the time. Yes. And if you're 50 years old, you've had 50 years of hearing what society and mom and dad and grandma and grandpa tell you what you should want, or how you should show up. How do people step from all that old programming into really understanding what they want and how they want to show up?
Yes. And we can't just get rid of that programming. We've been steeped in it. We've been soaking in it for a lifetime. But we can begin to nudge ourselves towards a life that is more authentic to yourself. There's a number of things you can do. I think one of the exercises is to consider, who do you admire? Who do you admire? What characters? And they could be historical characters or real life people that you know, people that you see in the media, or even fictitious characters. So in one of my workshops, I asked the audience, can you think of someone that actually you look up to, someone that you admire? They have qualities that you respect. Lots of different answers, but someone put their hand up and said, you know what? Jon Snow. I said, Jon Snow? Yes, Jon Snow, the leader from the Game of Thrones TV show. She said, he is such an honorable man. He's trustworthy. He does what he says he's going to do. He takes care of others. And what's front of mind for him is always doing what's right, even when it's personally difficult. So we can find role models in all parts of the life, real ones, fictitious ones, historical ones. They could be religious leaders. And in those role models, we can then ask ourselves, okay, well, what is it about them? What are the qualities that they are demonstrating? So that's one way, Vince, to look to those who inspire us and to tease out what are the qualities that they embody.
Have you found it dangerous at all when people do that, to try to emulate what they think will make them happy, or what they think will help them be as popular as the character that they're emulating?
People already come in imagining, as we all do, that the path to happiness is to have stuff and to be more successful and have more power. So people are already in a dangerous position, because it's a strategy that does not lead to satisfaction or authenticity. So no, when people are excited to engage with this exercise, not because they're saying, okay, I have to live a life 100% aligned. I need to be a warrior chieftain. That's the only way I can be happy is actually to have the same role and to dress the same way. So no, we're not talking about having the same voice and cutting your hair the same way. We're simply talking about taking some of the qualities and then asking yourself, okay, if you, Vince, let's say, well, let me ask you, Vince, who do you admire? What character might embody some of the qualities that you admire?
Like you said, I really admire people who can express themselves and what's coming from their heart, intelligently, with the material flowing, but also being very engaging. And there's several speakers out there that do it in their own field, in their own way, but those are the people that I'm really drawn to, that can really speak their truth.
Yeah, wonderful. Speaking their truth, that's the quality, and you especially admire it when it's done with eloquence and in an intelligent manner. Fantastic. So I'd then ask you, so Vince, if you were to speak your truth just a little more today, what opportunities may be coming up where you could speak your truth? And we'd have an
I see where you're going.
We'd look for practical examples, and people would explore and they would rehearse in their minds. Okay, what would it be like if I was to be a little bit more like that in my life? And we'd all set each other, well, we'd all set our own little assignments, little practices, and we'd try them out, and we'd come back and we'd talk about, what worked well, what didn't work so well. It's a practice. Becoming authentic and living an authentic life is an ongoing, never-ending practice, but it's one we can all get better at.
What do you find as the biggest deterrent for people to really, truly find their authentic self?
Well, you might not like this, but I'm going to, because I mean, a lot of folk, what they want at this stage is a clever answer, sort of like a mind hack, a psychological mind hack. What holds people back? What's the 3-step technique that we can use to get around it? The reality is what holds a lot of us back is something rather ordinary, and it's our physiology. So when you are tired, when any of us are tired, we've not had high quality sleep, we will be more reactive, more impulsive, and we will slip into autopilot. A life that is authentic, a life true to ourselves, is one in which you are intentional. You are conscious, you are awake, and you're deliberate in your actions. So the first thing actually we need to attend to, and I know it's a bit boring, but the first thing we need to attend to, if we're really going to live a life of choosing how we're going to show up rather than reacting to the life around us, is we've just got to take care of our physiology. We've got to take, and the number one thing is sleep. So every night, Vince, as you're probably aware, we have these sleep cycles, and we all go through this dreaming phase about 5 to 7 times every night. 5 to 7, REM sleep, they call it. And it's during REM sleep that your neurology, your emotional circuits get a makeover. They get tuned up, a bit like a piano being tuned, being adjusted. I'm not a musician. I understand from time to time you need to open up your piano and adjust those wires. Well, we get a kind of a tune-up every night during REM sleep. But if you cheat yourself of a full night of sleep, or if you go to bed having drunk some alcohol close to going to bed, the quality of that REM sleep is destroyed. It's shattered, and you do not get your emotional intelligence makeover. You will enter the next day more reactive, more impulsive, assuming the worst, and on autopilot. So that's the first thing I'd say. We've got to take care of our physiology. Sleep's number one. And again, it's boring, but when we move, when we engage in exercise, it changes our ability to live courageous lives true to ourselves. Movement emboldens your brain. It's dull. This is, everyone kind of knows, oh, we've got to exercise more. Well, it's not for muscles, it's not for muscle tone, but your neurology is emboldened if you exercise. You're more positive when we move. And I'm not talking about marathons or anything, but just getting the pulse up a little bit. Your body releases chemicals called myokines into the bloodstream, and they literally embolden you. You see possibility. You feel a little bit more buoyant. You feel a little bit more willing to do what's hard. So we need to move. And the final thing, and this is boring too, but I'm going to say it, we need to eat nourishing food. It turns out that when we eat high quality food, it takes care of this gut biome we're hearing a lot about nowadays, the tiny little microflora and gut bacilli that live inside our gut. So when you eat well, you're eating for yourself, but you're also eating and nourishing these little creatures. And it turns out that half of the living cells in your body, Vince, they're not Vince. They're 50% of you is that's living, of the number of cells, at least, not by weight, the number of cells. It's this gut biome. And when you feed them well, they change your mood. Absolutely extraordinary. And we're not talking about very expensive foods, but just things like vegetables. It's ordinary things. It turns out this gut biome loves fiber, adores fiber. It's the stuff we all kind of already know. Nutritious food, it feeds you, but it also feeds your gut biome, and your gut biome will say thank you by elevating your mood. Sugar, excessive sugar and carbs will deplete your mood. And trying to live a courageous life that's true to yourself, asking for what you want, showing up as the kind of person you'd really like to be, fundamentally requires that we first take care of our physiology through sleep, movement, and good mood food.
Eric, you've shared so many good things with us. What's the number one thing that you would like the imagination to take away from our time together?
Okay, and I'm just going to introduce this idea. It's a big idea right at the end, but I think it's the biggest catalyst to living a courageous, authentic life. The biggest catalyst, and it's one we keep looking over, and we don't like to engage with it, but it's this. It's that we are mortal creatures. It's the third human predicament. From a very early age, we all recognize, hang on, animals die, older people die, I'm a person. Surely not. And it's an uncomfortable truth, isn't it, Vince? It's one we don't like to engage in. But paradoxically, when we can truly own the fact that this ride we're on is not going to last forever, at least in this episode. I don't know if there are future chapters, I don't know, but this chapter, it has an ending. And it's so important that just occasionally we turn towards the fact that we're not here forever, and really truly understand that our time is precious. It's limited, and it's a non-renewable resource. There's a website I'd urge your listeners to go to called count.life, count.life. And it just prompts you. It says, okay, when were you born? You type in your birth date. It says, how long do you think you'll live for? I like to put in 100, Vince. I like, be generous, whatever. You type it, you press enter, and then it just presents you with a wall of bricks. Every brick is a week of your life. The top half shows the bricks you've already lived. The bottom half shows in a different color the bricks that still await you, assuming you get all the way to the end. There's something very powerful about time being represented graphically, and it'll land for you in a way that words never can. It's one thing to say, oh, I've got another 50 years of life or 70 years of life or 30, whatever it is. It's one thing to use words. It's another thing to actually look at, well, what does that look like? Weeks. How many weeks? And I'm making a prediction here. If all your listeners have a look, they'll be surprised how few weeks there actually are, regardless of your age, regardless of where you are. And it's important that we just acknowledge that, okay, there are a certain amount of weeks, because when we do, it's a catalyst for living boldly now while we can. Your time is precious. It's a kick up the backside to get out there, say the things that are important today to the people that you work with and that you care about, to reach for what's important, to show up as the kind of person you'd really like to be right now.
Eric, thank you so much. That's excellent advice. One of the disadvantages of having a 30-minute podcast is that we don't get to hear all the amazing things that our guests have to share. Could you tell the audience how they could find more about you and how they could get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to my website, ericwinters.com.au, you could see all the talks and workshops that I now deliver online, of course, around the planet. But you can also download the first chapter of my book for free. And another prediction I'd make is you can tell actually from the first page of my book whether or not this is a book that's going to really resonate and inspire you to live a life that's true to yourself. So I'd encourage people to download that chapter 1.
Thank you so much, Eric Winters, for joining us, sharing definitely your passion with the world. And thank you for showing up in the way that you do. We truly appreciate you.
Thanks so much for the opportunity, Vince.
On behalf of my wife and business partner, Mary, and the entire team at Imagine Miracles, we want to wish each and every one of you a miracle day.
You've completed this episode of The Miracle You, but we have plenty more to help you discover your own personal passion and purpose. Head over to themiracleyou.com for free resources to assist you on your journey, as well as register for our free webinar, Discover Your Miracle Life, 3 mind-awakening steps toward your unique purpose, or apply for a one-on-one Your Life, Your Way breakthrough session and discover your next best step on your journey. All available exclusively on our website. That's themiracleyou.com. We look forward to sharing more experiences of passion, purpose, and life by design next time, right here on The Miracle You.